So, welcome students. In this lecture, we'll see the equilibrium and kinetics. This is basically a revision that already you have done probably in your earlier at the high school level or maybe in the initial chemistry course. But these are the basic building blocks of whatever we are going to study in this particular course. So, we'll start with equilibrium. So let us first try to understand what we mean by the stability of the equilibrium through this particular rectangular block. Now see, in the first figure you can see there is a rectangular block. Let us consider this is figure number 1, and the same rectangular block in the second figure is basically, you can see it is in a different orientation, and in the third configuration you can see this is again in a different configuration. Now if we plot these different configurations in this diagram, here in the y-axis I have actually plotted the potential energy, okay, potential energy. And in the x-axis I have plotted configuration. I have plotted configuration in the x-axis. So here you can see what is potential energy. In a simple way, you know that if this is the position of the CG, let us take the red one. So if this is the CG, then if this height is from the base, if you consider this height is h, then simply the potential energy will be mg into h. Okay. As the breadth and width of this particular block are different, as you can see here, this dimension and this dimension are different. So this value, let us consider the CG from the datum is at a height h1. So its potential energy at configuration 1, let us consider this point represents the configuration 1, and the corresponding potential energy here is basically mgh1. Okay, so this is mgh1. Now see another orientation here. If you see the third orientation, third configuration, in the third configuration this height is h2 from the datum. So the potential energy is mgh2. So this is corresponding to the third configuration if we consider, and this potential energy corresponding to this is mgh2, and it is clear from this 1 and 3 configuration that h2 is less than h1. Okay, so you can see in the diagram also the same thing is showing that this point is lower than this point. Now this configuration 1 and configuration 2, these two positions are in equilibrium, because the weight that is acting and the normal reaction, these two are exactly same, and it is in an equilibrium condition. That we can understand. 1 and 3 configurations are equilibrium. Now see configuration 2. It is clear that the position of the CG in case of configuration 2 definitely will be higher than the other two positions, right? At this orientation definitely this h3 will be maximum. In fact, if you compare the whole orientation starting from 1 and gradually you are changing this angular position theta, and finally coming to the third configuration, if you consider all these values of theta, this configuration 2 will have the highest position of CG. Okay, so it is clear that the potential energy corresponding to configuration 2 is the maximum. Okay, and here also if you see carefully, the normal reaction which is acting on the block by the ground here is exactly in the same line in which the weight is acting. That means this configuration 2 is also in equilibrium. So the three configurations we can see, 1, 2 and 3, all these three configurations are in equilibrium. There are other configurations, like other intermediate configurations you can think of, and those configurations are not in equilibrium. Those are not in equilibrium, but this 1, 2 and 3, these configurations are in equilibrium. And definitely those non-equilibrium configurations, if this theta is slightly smaller than this one, if you just try to think of that particular configuration where this is G and normal reaction are acting in a different direction, definitely this is not a situation where equilibrium will be maintained, because there is a net resultant moment that is going to act. It is not in equilibrium, and that position you can understand that the position of CG is such, it is just below this maximum one, so maybe some intermediate position. So in this way, basically at each and every orientation or each and every configuration, this MGH is plotted, where H is the position of this CG at that orientation from the datum. So we have seen this particular diagram. This diagram is very important in a sense that we want to define the equilibrium or stability in terms of energy. We want to define everything in terms of energy, because that is very, very important. Definitely you can define equilibrium in terms of force. You know that if there is no net force or no net moment acting on the body, it will be in equilibrium. But we are trying to define equilibrium or in terms of energy, or stability in terms of energy. So everything in this particular course we will try to express it in terms of energy, because that is very, very important. So you can understand that 3 equilibrium positions we can see, but at the same time you can also note that this particular equilibrium is not a very stable equilibrium, because if you slightly deviate this position, it will not come back to its initial position. Whereas configuration 1 and 3 are such that if you slightly deviate from its position, it will again come back to its position. So that is why this 2 is in equilibrium, but this is not a stable equilibrium, and 1 and 3, these configurations are stable equilibrium condition. Okay, because if you slightly deviate from its configuration, it will again come back to its initial position. So that is why you can get some idea about what we mean by stability. Now let us see the proper mathematical definition of stability in terms of energy. So the definition of equilibrium is an infinitesimally small perturbation. Perturbation means a very small movement or displacement or deviation. So an infinitesimally small perturbation does not change the energy or the state of the rectangular block, then it is called equilibrium. Remember, this word is very, very important, infinitesimally small. Infinitesimally small means the deviation that you are making, maybe in this particular example, the deviation you are making in terms of angular deviation, right? So this is tending to 0. So if you make a very small deviation from its position, which that is tending to 0, which is called infinitesimally small. So if you make an infinitesimally small perturbation or disturbance, perturbations is like disturbance. If you make an infinitesimally small perturbation, it does not change the energy or state of the rectangular block. Then we call that it is in a equilibrium position. Okay, and that is true when dE by d theta, in our case, where by theta we are representing the configuration, is equal to 0, where this theta indicates the configuration. This can be x, this can be theta, whatever you write, but basically with respect to theta, if you make a very small change, the energy is not going to change. So this is what is the condition of equilibrium. And that means in an energy diagram, that means energy configuration diagram, this basically indicates nothing but the slope of the diagram at that position. And if you see carefully, this 1, 2 and 3 are the positions where the slope is exactly 0. The tangent, if you draw, the slope of the tangent is equal to 0. That means the extremum is there, extremum exists. So this is what is the definition of equilibrium. Now coming to the definition of stable equilibrium. What we mean by the stable equilibrium? The equilibrium is stable if small perturbation, it is not saying that infinitesimally small, it is saying that if it is a small perturbation, then it does not change the state of the energy. The small perturbation is not which is tending to 0, but definitely it is small, maybe delta theta. If you deviate it, then again it will not change. The energy is not going to change. That you can see corresponding to the minima position. So corresponding to the minima in the diagram, because this remember this dE d theta is equal to 0 is possible whether this is either maxima or minima. So stable equilibrium basically corresponds to the minima position. So where the energy is minimum. Okay. So this is what is the definition of the stable equilibrium. In that case, remember, the small perturbation does not change its state. Again it will come back to its original state if you really deviate it. Otherwise it is unstable. Otherwise it is unstable means you can see in case of a maxima position, that is the case where if you perturbate it will not come back to its position, that means it is unstable equilibrium. Okay. Now let us see a few important terminologies we frequently use in this particular course. The first thing is the minimum energy. So in the energy diagram means this energy versus configuration diagram that we have just seen. The minimum energy is corresponds to the stable equilibrium. The minimum energy corresponding to the stable equilibrium. In the diagram you have seen there are more than one number of minimum possible. So there may be more than one number of minima. These are all local minimas are present, maybe more than one. So those all minima positions are stable equilibrium. Okay, that you have to remember. Now maximum energy which corresponds to the unstable equilibrium. Remember, maximum energy corresponds to the unstable equilibrium. Now among all this minima position, which is the global minimum, that means minimum of all this local minimum is what is the global minimum, and that is what is called the most stable state. That is called the most stable state, and other than global minima, all other local minima are called metastable states. So in our diagram, if we see among the between these two minima position, you see that this one is the global minima, because this one is the among the between these two minima position, this is the most minimum position, and this one is the metastable state, because this is also minima, but this is not a global minima or the most, this is not the most stable state, this is the most stable state, and this is the metastable state. And on the other hand, this is the unstable state, unstable. But all these three states, remember, are in equilibrium. Okay, so these are very important. And remember that most of the cases in practice, what we observe that the materials which are at the most stable state are not practically used for the engineering materials as an engineering material. Like in case of iron, if you see, the most stable state of iron is basically its oxides, or most stable states of aluminium is its oxides. Okay, so they are not directly used as a most stable state. Rather, the metastable states are practically used. Like steel, when you are using iron as a steel in the form of steel, remember that is not the most stable state, that is rather the metastable state. But metastable states can also stay for a very, very long time. But always you know that there will be a tendency to attain the most stable state, and that is why you see that the rusting occurs. Okay. So the most stable state, the naturally occurring state, is the oxide state. That is why they always tries to be attain the most stable state. But the metastable states are also very stable states, and a lot of steel structures, you know, stays for more than 100 years without any problem. So metastable states are also metastable states, rather in most of the cases they can be practically used as engineering materials because of their different properties of the most stable states are not suitable for practical purposes, and that is why we do some processing and by which we create these metastable states, and those are again stable state and stays for very long time. Okay, now coming to the different kinds of properties that you have already learned in thermodynamics, let us just see all these things. Why we are interested to see these properties? It is very important because we have seen that in case of a rectangular block, it is the potential energy. We can easily plot which one, what is the potential energy. We can see, okay, potential energy is minimum, means it's a stable state. We can understand all these things. But if I tell you that iron, if I tell you aluminium or the copper, so you just do not understand what I mean by the energy. Which energy we are actually talking in this particular case? It is not a direct potential energy. So which energy? So we have to search in thermodynamics that in a material what kind of different types of energy or this kind of term that we have learned. So that is why we are just that is why we are looking for all these different terms that we have seen in case of thermodynamics. Specifically we are interested, remember, in energy quantities. Okay, so intensive properties, as you know, these are the properties does not depend on the amount on which that you are taking, because like pressure, if you take a certain amount of material, its pressure does not depend that how much you are taking. Okay, so it does not depend upon the mass in that sense. Okay, it does not depend upon the amount or the volume that you are taking. So this is what is the intensive property. You know that the pressure, temperature, these were the intensive properties. So these are nothing very important to us right now. Let us go to these extensive properties which are very much dependent on the how much amount we are taking. It depends on the mass or the volume that you are taking. The first thing is that we'll see the internal energy. This thing already you have seen in thermodynamics. Enthalpy you have seen in thermodynamics, and if you remember, they are extensive property, depends upon the mass, depends upon the amount. If the mass is more, internal energy is more, and enthalpy will be more. Okay, and their unit, if you see, these are all joule energy. These are all energy. Okay, internal energy or the enthalpy having the similar unit, joule. So let us try to see these quantities once again. So what is internal energy? See, internal energy U is, we can write mathematically, is U naught. U naught indicates the internal energy at 0 Kelvin, internal energy at 0 Kelvin, plus integration 0 to 2 T mass into CV into dt, where this capital T indicates the temperature, CV is specific heat at constant volume, and m is the mass. So this is the way by which at a particular temperature we can find out what is the internal energy of a substance. Now this U0 is basically internal energy at 0 Kelvin. If you want to physically understand what we mean by this quantity, it is basically, if you draw the this Condon-Morse curve. This is what is the Condon-Morse curve. Already you have seen that in the y-axis it indicates the energy associated between the two atoms, the energy associated between the two atoms, and here in the x-axis, you know, the distance between the atoms. It is the distance between the atoms for their bonding. Okay, so this energy diagram already we have seen earlier. and this is the point where the energy is minimum. And if you remember, I told you that this particular energy corresponding to minimum is what is called bond energy. This was the bond energy. Okay, so this bond energy is physically what is U0. Okay, so U0 is basically what is this bond energy. If you try to compare actually what is this in a material. Okay, so this is what is the bond energy corresponding to that you remember. Now regarding enthalpy, if you remember, enthalpy is what? That enthalpy H, it is defined as internal energy plus pressure into volume, where V is the volume, P is the pressure, and U is the internal energy. This is what is the definition of enthalpy. And in case of solids, remember that this PV term is very, very small, rather negligible. This PV term is negligible with respect to this U. Specifically with respect to the bond energy, this PV term can be neglected, and that is why in case of solids, since in this particular course the material that we are discussing mainly the solids, and in those cases basically we are going to neglect this PV term. But definitely remember, in case of gases this PV term is very large, and that is why for calculating enthalpy you have to consider this PV term. Okay, but in case of solids it's all the same, whether you call it internal energy or enthalpy, it's all the same, because this PV term is negligible in case of solids. Just to get this idea, here you can see one example. This example is for 1 mole of copper at 1 atmosphere. It has been taken 1 mole of copper at 1 atmosphere. If you see the PV term, here you can see 1 atmospheric pressure. You know that 1 atmospheric pressure is 0.1 megapascal, approximately 0.1 megapascal, and the volume of 1 mole of copper is 7.09 into 10 to the minus 6 in meter cube. If you multiply, you will get it is 0.716 joule. Whereas if you see that the bond energy related to 1 mole of copper, since copper atoms are surrounded by 12 other copper atoms, and each 2 copper atoms sharing 1 bond, that means you can consider in 1 mole there are 6 mole of copper bonds. So each copper bond having energy which is 56.4 kilojoule, so there are 6 mole having 6 into 56.4, that means it is equal to 338 kilojoule. So 56.4 kilojoule is per mole. Okay, this is per mole, this is what is the copper bond, and for 6 mole it will be 338 kilojoule. Now you just compare the bond energy which is a part of U, which is the U0, 338 kilojoule, and this is only 0.716 joule, not even joule. So definitely this quantity can be neglected with respect to this bond energy. So that is why remember, for the solids it is H and U are all the same. So enthalpy and internal energy are all the same in case of solids. Okay, because of this reason. Now, okay, so what we have seen, that in case of materials, at least we can see from the thermodynamics, we have seen either enthalpy or internal energy. That might be one of the energy that we are looking for the stability criteria. In case of a rectangular block, we have seen the stability criteria was given by the potential energy. In case of material, we know that because from the thermodynamics, in a material there are internal energy, there are enthalpy. So in case of solids they are same. So let us plot that internal energy or enthalpy, whatever you call, So let us plot enthalpy, and let us consider in the x-axis is the temperature. Let us consider x-axis is the temperature and y-axis is the enthalpy, and here the temperature, if you plot in Kelvin, here maybe this is H naught. Okay, now here we are considering a situation where you are gradually heating a solid, and let us consider this is the solid that you are heating, and since you are heating the solid, what will happen, its internal energy or the enthalpy will gradually increase along the blue line, as you can see, as the temperature increases. And since we are considering a pure solid, and here you can see at this temperature, if we call this temperature as the melting point, this is that melting point, you know that during the phase change from solid to liquid there will be no change of temperature, but the latent heat will be added, so definitely the energy content will increase. So it will directly go here, and then it will follow. Let us consider this line, which is basically the liquid line. Let us consider this is the liquid line. As you increase the temperature, its enthalpy or the internal energy will gradually increase. Now you see that the stability criteria, if we want to just compare, so this dotted extension line of the red line indicates the liquid line, and the blue dotted line indicates extension line indicates the solid line. Here you can see that if the temperature is below melting point, let us consider one temperature which is below melting point. Suppose this temperature which is below melting point, and at that temperature which state is stable? At below melting point temperature, which state is stable, solid or a liquid? Let us consider there is a in a freezer, if the temperature, we can put ice or water, which one is a stable state within a freezer? Suppose the temperature is say -5 degrees centigrade or -10 degrees centigrade or -15 degrees centigrade within a freezer. Here you can see the melting point. Let us consider for the ice, for example, the 0 degree centigrade at atmospheric pressure, and if it is less than 0 degree centigrade, definitely the stable state is the solid state, is the stable state, because below melting point the solid state is the stable state, because if you put liquid within a freezer at -15 degrees centigrade, naturally it will be converted into solid, because at below melting point temperature the stable state is the solid state. And here if you compare at this temperature, which energy is less, definitely the energy corresponding to solid is less. That means the less energy, which indicates the more stable state. So for this part it is satisfying. Okay, that means that energy that we have considered in case of rectangular block was potential energy, maybe for the material that energy is the enthalpy. Let us check on the other side. If the temperature is above melting point, if the temperature is above melting point, that means in a table at a room temperature say 25 degrees centigrade, if you put a block of ice, what will happen? Which state is the stable state, solid state or a liquid state? Definitely above melting point the stable state is the liquid state, because ice will naturally convert it into liquid. But here from the diagram what we observe, that which one having the lower energy state? Here you can see in case of solid you are getting the lower energy, whereas in case of a liquid you are getting the higher energy. So higher energy cannot be the stable state. That means the stability criteria, if we are looking for a stability criteria and the energy, that energy definitely is not enthalpy or the internal energy. That we can at least conclude, because this is not satisfying on the other half. For this part it is not satisfying. If it is the enthalpy, then definitely you will find that this liquid line was below the solid line in that region also. So we can conclude that H or U that we have learned in thermodynamics is not going to give us the stability criteria for the general material. Okay, so we have to keep on searching that what is that energy we are looking for, so that we can understand that material stability criteria will be based on that. Okay, now let us see another very important property that you have learned in thermodynamics, that is entropy. And entropy, the definition, as you know, is integration 0 to T m into Cp. Remember, entropy is also an extensive property, dt divided by T. Okay, so this is what is the definition of entropy. Rather, to be very specific, this is what is the definition of thermal entropy. Okay, so now you see this thermal entropy that can be defined like this, and this thermal energy that is there within a material stored in basically manifestation of either oscillatory motion of the molecules or atoms, or rotational or the translational. So there are three different kinds of motion present within the atoms or molecules with which that material actually made of. And remember, in case of solids specifically, in case of crystalline solids, to be very specific, maybe in case of non-crystalline also the oscillatory is present, but in case of solids, either crystalline or non-crystalline, in both cases, this is the only way by which the thermal energy is stored within the material. So in case of solids, it is the only oscillatory motion. As you know that within a material, the atoms are actually moving with respect to its mean position, rather oscillates with respect to its mean position. This is what is the oscillatory motion. In this way, the energy is present within the material. So you are calling that energy is thermal energy. That means if you increase the temperature, this oscillation, its amplitude and other things is going to change. So this oscillatory motion is basically manifested as the temperature when we are externally measure. Okay, so this motion is actually carrying the energy within the material in case of solids. In case of liquids and gases, the other two forms are there. In case of liquids and gases, it is the rotational and translational motions are present in case of liquids and gases. But in this course, we are not going into the detail of liquids and gases. We will mainly concentrate on solids, to be very specific, mostly on the crystalline solids. So oscillatory motion will be present within the material, and that is basically the reason behind the thermal energy present. Now this oscillatory motion, it has frequency, and that frequency, if you just gradually increase its temperature from the 0 Kelvin, then gradually you will find that at 0 Kelvin no oscillatory motion is there. And as you are increasing from the 0 Kelvin, gradually the frequency will increase, and you will find that around 200 Kelvin, more than 200 Kelvin, this frequency almost stabilizes and it does not increase much. Okay, and that is around 10 to the power 13 per second. 10 to the power 13 per second. This is what is the frequency. If you increase the temperature above 200 Kelvin. So above 200 Kelvin, this frequency is almost constant. It is not going to increase much even if you are increasing the temperature. Okay, so this particular stabilized frequency above 200 Kelvin, 10 to the power 13 per second, this is what is called lattice vibration frequency. Okay, symbolized by nu, lattice vibration frequency. Now within this oscillatory motion, the thermal energy within this oscillatory motion, you can see the energy that is stored within the material can be estimated. The average energy per atom per mode of oscillation, that is equal to K into T, where this K is the Boltzmann constant. This K is the Boltzmann constant, and you can see the value of the K 1.38 10 to the minus 23 joule per Kelvin, and T is the temperature in Kelvin. Okay, so this is what is the average energy per atom. Okay, because these atoms which are basically oscillating, remember, they do not have, all the atoms do not have the same energy. Okay, they are varying amplitude, in varying direction their oscillation is taking place. Maybe their frequency is stabilized at a particular value, but their amplitude is varying, remember, and this amplitude directly indicates that its thermal energy. If amplitude is more, that means its thermal energy is more, or the temperature is more. If the amplitude is less, its thermal energy is less, means the temperature is less. So amplitude is varying continuously. Direction, in which direction they are oscillating, the mode of oscillation, that is also varying in different directions. Because what happens when two atoms are basically oscillating, that means the electron clouds, they are basically oscillating with respect to a mean position. You can think of that as if they are colliding. And when they are colliding, then what happens? One atom is losing energy, maybe other atom is gaining energy. Okay, so it is clear that because of the different directions they are moving, they are also, because of this oscillation, their directions are changing. And since some of them are getting energy, so their amplitudes are increasing. So that is why what happens throughout the material, if you try to see their energy level, all the atoms having different energy, and they do not have the same energy, and they having a very small value of energy close to zero to a very, very high value of energy towards infinity. So they are actually varying energy from very small value to a very high value at different atoms. They do not have the same energy, but that is why since there is a lot of variation present within the energy, that is why different statistical quantities are coming into picture, like average, standard deviation, or the probability of energy having a particular value. These things are going to come. So the average energy per atom, this is a kind of thing, average energy per atom, that is equal to K into T. Okay, so K, you know, T is the temperature in Kelvin, and here you can see universal gas constant is basically Boltzmann constant multiplied by the Avogadro number. See, this N is nothing but the Avogadro number. Okay, so that is why you can see instead of per atom, now you can represent it as per mole, because you know that in a particular 1 mole there are Avogadro number of atoms present. Okay, so that is why if you multiply it by Avogadro number of atoms, it becomes per mole what is the amount of energy present. Okay, so that is what is called the universal gas constant. Now randomness. Now randomness associated with the thermal entropy is definitely related to the oscillation. Already I have told you that oscillations having varying amplitude, oscillations having varying directions. So that is why definitely the randomness is associated with the atoms, because you have heard of that entropy indicates an idea about the randomness within the material. So this randomness is basically associated with the thermal energy, and thermal energy means associated with the oscillation of the atoms. Okay, and oscillations means in terms of amplitude, in terms of direction, the randomness are present. Okay, now if you see the Maxwell-Boltzmann statistics, this is again a very important statistics, we are going to use it. The probability that in an ensemble a species has energy greater than equal to E at a temperature T. That means let us consider there is an ensemble of atoms present. So lot of atoms are there. You can consider, let us consider 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter cube material is there, and the number of atoms are in the order of 10 to the power 23. So it's a large ensemble of atoms are there in 1 centimeter cube volume. Just to give you some idea of the feeling that how many these atoms are within a small volume. So in these atoms, already we have seen that atoms having different level of energy. They are varying from very small value to a very large value. So different statistics are, that is why proposed. One of the very important one is the probability that in an ensemble a species having energy greater than equal to E. In this case you can consider the species might be the atom. Atom is like the species. Okay. So that number of atoms having energy greater than equal to E. So that means let us consider there are total number of atoms present is capital N. Total number of atoms present is capital N, and this capital N number of atoms having different level of energies. All of them do not have the same energy. And let us consider out of them there are N number of atoms there are small n number of atoms having energy more than a particular value, say E. Small n number of atoms having energy more than E. Okay, so the probability that what is the fraction of atom having energy more than E is basically this n by A, capital N. Okay, so this probability according to the Boltzmann statistic is exponential of minus of this value E above this energy E divided by K is Boltzmann constant into T. Okay, so this is what is the Boltzmann statistics. It gives you the idea of the probability of species having energy more than E at a temperature T. Okay, so this is a very, very important results, and in our course we are going to use these particular results. So try to remember these particular statistics. Okay. Now another kind of entropy is present in case of crystalline solids. We have already seen the thermal entropy. Thermal entropy presents both in solids, liquids and gases. In all of them thermal entropy present, but configuration entropy presents only in crystalline solids, not even non-crystalline solids this thermal configuration entropy present. Configuration entropy presents in only in crystalline solids, and it is defined as, it is measured as K. This K is the again the Boltzmann constant into natural logarithm ln W. This W is number of configurations having same energy. W indicates the number of configurations having same energy. What is the meaning of this W? Let us try to understand through these pictures. Here we have considered, for simplicity, there are, let us consider there are 16 atoms. In each figure you will find there are 16 atoms where 8 are red and 8 are green. You can see in each figure there are 8 green and 8 red atoms are there, and suppose they are forming randomly. If you observe the picture 1, picture 2, their orientation is quite random. Randomly they are oriented. But if you observe carefully picture 3 and picture 4, you observe a specific pattern in 3 and 4. So what is the specific pattern you are observing in 3 and 4? In 3 and 4, in 3 you will find there is only, if you consider, there is only RG bond present, red green bond present in picture 3. Only red green bond present. There is no RR bond, there is no GG bond present. Okay, but here you will find both RR, GG, RG, all kinds of bonds are there, and all these bonds energy by adding all this bond energy, basically the total energy content of the material indicates. So this, here you can see that RG is the only bond that is present. So definitely it is clear that this picture 3, this particular orientation is a specific orientation, and definitely the energy content of this material might be different from this general arbitrary orientation. Again, if you observe specifically in picture 4, what you are observing, there is only either RR bond present or GG bond present. Either RR bond present or GG bond present. You can argue that at the boundary we can see that there are RG bond, but if you just think of there are 10 to the power 23 number of atoms are present, only a boundary, only there are few number of bonds, you can just neglect. But basically there are either bonds are there between RR or between GG. So these 3 and 4 are special kind of orientation, and expected they will have different energy. But 1 and 2 are kind of orientation which is quite random, and expected they will all have the similar kind of energy. So the number of configuration, so W is what? W is the number of configuration having same energy. If we consider this particular configuration of 16 atoms where 8 are of one kind and 8 are of different kind, in that case how many different orientation, how many different configuration you can make total? That is 16C8. And if you calculate this 16C8, it will be more than 10,000. If you just calculate it, it is a very, very large number. 16C8, very, very large number. And out of this large number, how many having the different energy level? Only 2. This and this, 3 and 4. So the W is equal to what? So number of configurations having same energy is basically 16C8 minus 2. And for a very large ensemble, you can neglect even that minus 2, because 16C8 is a very, very large number. So directly what we generally do is to find out the configuration, we directly find out 16C8. Okay, so this is what we mean by the W, the number of configurations having the same energy. Now for this kind of calculation, it is very clear that 16C8 or this kind of calculation factorial term is going to come, and that is why one Starling's approximation might help you for your mathematical simplicity. You just remember that is ln, let me write it like this, ln x factorial is equal to x ln x minus x. Okay, so this is what is the Starling's approximation, but this is only true if x is a large number. This is only true if x is a large number. If x is much greater than 1, then you can use this approximation, that log of x factorial is equal to x log x minus x. You can see to find out the configuration entropy, this Starling's approximation is very, very helpful in many cases. Okay. Now we have seen that the total energy content within the material, that might be either H or U, that you have seen. Then we have seen the bound energy. See, the bound energy is because of the entropy present. This entropy in the thermal entropy or the configuration entropy, we have seen the thermal entropy, we have seen the configuration entropy. Configuration entropy definitely stays only for the crystalline solids, but summation of these two, thermal entropy plus configuration entropy, is the total entropy. Okay, and remember, thermal entropy depends on temperature, but configuration entropy does not depend on temperature. It only depends on the orientation or configuration, or the number of atoms or different kinds of species present within the material. It only depends on that. Okay, configuration entropy. So because of the entropy, the energy, that is basically the bound energy. You cannot extract work out of it. If the material having some energy, it is possible to that material can do some work because of that energy. But because of entropy, certain energy is actually bound within the material and you cannot get work out of it. So this energy is called bound energy, and bound energy is measured as temperature in Kelvin into total entropy S. Total entropy means both configuration and thermal entropy. So Ts is measure of the bound energy. So bound energy cannot be extracted out from the material. H is the total energy. So the free energy that material can actually, the work output we can get, that is the free energy, which is basically the total energy minus the bound energy. Okay, or to be very specific, you should write total energy minus bound energy, and this bound energy and the Gibbs free energy is basically, if you consider the total energy to be H and the bound energy is Ts, so this quantity is what is called the Gibbs free energy. And Helmholtz free energy is what is called, if you consider the internal energy as the total energy minus T into S. Remember, in case of gases, these two are definitely different, but in case of solids, H and U all the same. So in our case, since we are dealing with solids, Gibbs free energy and the Helmholtz free energy are all the same. Okay, so they are not different. Now coming to our previous problem of the heating of a solid, we have observed Now instead of the enthalpy or the internal energy, let us plot the free energy. Let us plot the Gibbs free energy here in the y-axis, and the x-axis if we plot the temperature. And if we see, this one corresponds to the liquids, this red one corresponds to the liquid, and this blue one actually corresponds to the solids. And this you can, this why these lines for the liquids and solids are like this, you can just get the slope of del G del T at a constant pressure. If you just do that, you know the expression of G will get, it is minus S, and as you increase the temperature, you will see that will gradually increase. So in a negative direction, since negative sign is there, that is why it is increasing. As you can see, the slope is gradually increasing. So that is why this is what is the diagram of G versus T. And you can also see that it is 0 at T is equal to 0, because you know in case of crystalline solids the entropy is 0 at 0 Kelvin. Okay, entropy is 0 at 0 Kelvin, and that is why here the slope is 0. So anyway, so this is what is the diagram, and now you see that if the temperature, and this point corresponds to the melting point, here you can see this is corresponding to the melting point, and you see below melting point it is the solid state which is stable, and you see the free energy is less, whereas above melting point, if you see, it is the liquid which is stable, as you can see here. Okay, liquid which is stable, because that is having the lower energy. So it is clear that the spontaneous process, or a natural process, the change of free energy must be a negative quantity. Change of free energy must be a negative quantity. Change of free energy means if the process is taking place from 1 to 2,
So we can't hear
then
you.
delta G indicates G2 minus G1. So this is what is negative. That means it indicates what? That process will always go in a direction where its free energy is less. So G2 definitely less than G1 if the process taking place from 1 to 2. If the process taking place from 1 to 2, that means you can think in that way. If you keep a solid above melting point, if you keep a solid below melting point, sorry, if you keep a solid above melting point, that means, say, if you keep a solid above melting point, and if you keep it there, the natural process will be 1 to 2. Here you can see the process will be from 1 to 2, and it will become liquid after some time. Okay, so you can see the free energy change will be negative because G2 is less than G1. Okay. Now coming to the after equilibrium, let us see quickly kinetics. We have 2 or 3 more slides. We are almost at the end of this particular session. In kinetics, we'll see that this is what is the very common Arrhenius plot. If you remember your high school chemistry, that suppose hydrogen and iodine is reacting, and if it is producing HI, then in that process, if you plot the rate, you know that it is rate is equal to the rate of reaction is equal to some constant A into exponential minus of Q by RT. So basically here in the x-axis what has been plotted is the reciprocal of the temperature in Kelvin, and in the y-axis it is plotted the log of rate. Basically if you take the logarithm both side, you can see it will become a straight line with a negative slope of minus Q by R. So basically this slope is minus Q by R. Okay, so let us try to rationalize this particular relationship, that how in a particular transformation or equation this kind of thing happens. Let us consider an example where there is A and BC. These are the two things present, and we want to convert it by some chemical reactions. It will be converted to AB plus C. then what is to be done, that definitely the bond between B and C, the bond between B and C has to break, and bond between A and B has to form. So this is what is the transformation that is to be happen to make it. Now if you just consider a large amount of this kind of atoms and molecules where there all this B and C bond will break and will form A and B bond, this might be not possible, but you just try to think that what is the process by which this kind of thing happens. Here you can see that initially it is quite understandable that this A particular species and BC this particular species having certain average energy, and that average energy is there, but this is, remember, is the average energy, but that energy of them actually varying from a very from very small value to a very large value, as already we have described. Each and every atom and molecule having different energy level actually there. Maybe their average value to a particular value, but actually their energy level are changing. Now what happens, that some of the atoms or the molecules BC, some of the atoms or molecules may have energy level very high, may have very high energy level, and if the energy level is very high, then what happens, they can do lot of things. If the energy level is high, they can break among themselves, they can do lot of things. So at very high energy level they form this kind of a complex like ABC. Okay, so ABC is called the activated complex. This kind of complex produced only if the sufficient amount of energy is present, and definitely all these atoms or molecules do not have this much of energy so that they can form activated complex. Only a very small fraction of this whole ensemble having this kind of energy level, and that is why they can form activated complex. But when they form activated complex, definitely they having very high energy. Now they have two choices, they can either go in that direction, they can form A, B and C separately, or they can also go in the backward direction, they can again form A and B, C. Okay, so now it depends that finally in which direction the reaction will go depends on what is the average energy level of this state and this state, which one is the lower. So if this AB plus C is lower, then definitely it will go in that direction, and ultimately the reaction will propagate in that direction, in the forward direction. So let us try to see through the energy diagram the same thing. Here in this energy diagram, here this energy is nothing but the free energy. This is the free energy, and here you can see the configuration. So here it is basically A plus BC. What is the average energy of A plus BC? One of the equilibrium state. Okay, now here you can see that some of the energy I have already told, having some of the atoms and molecules having very high energy, and they can form this activated complex. Definitely this is not a stable situation, but it is activated complex has been formed here. Only the fraction definitely will create that, and now from here they can either go in that direction or they can go in that direction. But here you can see AB plus C having the average lower energy than this one, and that is why the net reaction will go in that direction. Okay, now if we want to just calculate this rate of reaction, then you tell me what will be this rate. This rate will be equal to what? The number of atoms that having energy. It is clear the number of atom having energy delta H star, if we consider this energy level is more than delta H star, they can only form this ABC, right? So how many atoms will having energy level more than delta H star? We can use the Boltzmann statistics. So what will be that? So let us consider that the n number of atoms having that much of energy level, n number of atoms, then what is the rate at which the reaction is transforming? So this number of atoms having forming the activated complex, that means they can only form AB plus C. That means the forward reaction can possible through N. And what is the rate? Rate definitely is the frequency, and the frequency what? It is the lattice vibration frequency, that is nu. So now what is this N? Already from the Maxwell-Boltzmann statistics we know what is N by N, that is exponential of minus of that energy level that is required here is what? Delta H star. Okay, so delta H star by KT. So N is nothing but capital N into exponential of minus of delta H star divided by kT into this gamma is there, nu is there, which is the frequency. So now its equation, its unit will become atoms per second. Okay, that is what is the rate. Unit should be matched. Okay, so n is the total number of atom, nu is the frequency, which is basically lattice vibration frequency, exponential minus delta H star by kT. It is exactly similar what we have seen in case of Arrhenius plot. The only difference was there in the Arrhenius plot, it was minus q by RT. See, this minus q by RT and these are all the same, because if you see this delta H star by kT, and if you multiply both sides by the Avogadro number, so you know that this Boltzmann constant and the Avogadro number is nothing but R. So in the denominator it will become RT, and the numerator, this quantity is basically what is Q. Basically this is firstly it was expressed per atom, here it is expressed per mole. That is the only difference. Okay, so it is all the same. So we can see that how this rate equations is actually coming. Okay, so this is the fundamental behind any kinetics or any kind of a chemical transformation that is taking place, and this is the basic mathematics or the mechanism behind it. Okay, so thank you.